Welcome to A Window on SAHMRI, where we take you inside South Australia's independent not-for-profit health and medical research institute. Each episode, we get to know the people driving our life-changing research, getting into what motivates them personally and how their work is delivering a brighter, healthier future for all.
Najma, you call yourself a massive nerd. What's nerdy about you?
I feel like if you have a career in research, you kind of have to be a bit of a nerd to be able to stick with the same subject for an entire career. And when you come up against questions that you can't really answer, to just have that tenacity to keep going. I don't think that's for the faint of heart. So I'd say most people in research would probably classify themselves as nerds.
Oh, well, you said it, not me.
Yeah.
What about outside of work, though?
Outside of work, am I nerdy?
Yeah.
No, not really. I guess it depends how you would define nerdy. I feel like it's different.
Like sci-fi?
Oh, no. Not into sci-fi, but I did grow up on Harry Potter, so.
Okay, that counts. I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah.
So you're just fascinated by research?
Yes. I just like to be able to answer those tough questions.
And how's that shaped who you are?
Well, I'm a stubborn person by nature anyway, so I guess that's sort of piece of it. But I just I like things that are challenging, and I like things that take a little bit more work ethic to actually get accomplished, because when you finally do accomplish it, like say a PhD, it's like the most rewarding thing on the planet. It means
more?
Yeah. It's just, if things come easily, it just doesn't really fascinate me as much as something that takes a bit of work.
Okay, so you're happy to play the long game.
Yes.
That's pretty unique these days, because I feel like instant gratification is a big thing and people just want the result now. They don't want to do the work. So it's not often that you meet people that see things the other way around.
Yeah, I find that like things that do come with instant gratification, like you just don't value them as much. And I'm the type of person that I have pretty strong values, and I like things that take effort and take time, because those are the things really worth crafting.
They say fast don't last.
No, it really doesn't.
And you're the eldest of 6.
Yeah.
What's it like being a big sister to so many?
I feel like you're a bit of everything. Like you are a counselor, you are a cheerleader, you are a second parent, you are trying to help them figure out their own way, but also making sure that, you know, they stay within guidelines, so to speak. So yeah, it's wearing a lot of different hats, and just being a second parent, I would say, is probably the big takeaway from being a big sister. Did
it force you to grow up a bit quicker?
Yeah, it definitely did, which is probably why I like things that take a bit more work to do, because you just didn't really get a chance to do a lot of things that a lot of other kids would do. Like I had to really help my parents out a lot, because, you know, they immigrated quite early when I was growing up. So I didn't really have a chance to go out and play as much. Like I really had to learn how to cook early. I had to help my little siblings with their homework and all that kind of stuff. So definitely did make me grow up a lot faster than other kids.
Did you resent that, or were you?
At the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but now looking back on it, I really love it, because I'm so close with all of my siblings, and they've all done really amazing for themselves and have gone on to, you know, have really good jobs and gone through uni, and they're their own people now. So I can actually just talk to them like an adult, which is really lovely.
And they give you the credit, right?
I would think. I mean, I remind them as often as I can that they should also get me a Mother's Day present.
And what's your family heritage?
I'm Somali. So it's in the Horn of Africa. If you've ever really looked at the map of Africa, it's just right on the Indian Ocean and across from the Arab world. So it is really like connecting the African continent to the Arab world.
Tell us a bit about your parents' journey bringing the family over from
Yeah. Well, how much time have you got?
Yeah, well, half an hour.
Yeah, so there was a civil war that started in the early 90s, and it was pretty much like we needed to get out straight away. So my parents somehow were able to just wrangle resources and get us out of there. And it was just overnight, everything that we just kind of took for granted was not there anymore. And then we had to, go through the process and head over to neighboring Kenya and stay there for a couple of years while my parents applied for immigration. And then we ended up in Canada in the middle of winter in 1997.
Wow.
And at that point, I had never seen snow in my life or even conceptually understood.
That would have been some culture shock.
Oh, you have no idea. I still have trauma to this day from that first, and I'm a naturally cold person as it is. I just did not cope there, which is probably how I ended up in Australia. I needed to get out of the cold.
Wow. So did you grow up in Canada then?
Yeah. I grew up in small town Saskatchewan. Do you know Canada very well?
I've heard of Saskatchewan, just that there's lots of forests and they've got big wolves there. That's all I know about it.
Wolves? I don't know, but we have lots of deer.
Yeah.
Lots of deer and lots of elk, lots of moose. And it's just flat. It is so flat that you can just watch your dog run away for 3 days. That's how flat it is.
And how big's the population of Saskatchewan?
The whole province is about 1 million people. In the city I grew up in, it's got a bit of a risque name, but it's pronounced Regina. It's a population 200,000. So pretty small.
And what was it like growing up in Canada?
It was pretty similar to Australia, which I really found it quite easy to just seamlessly move here, just because everybody was just so friendly, and we were one of very few African families actually, but we were just welcomed with open arms, and that's just the Canadian way really. It's really beautiful in the sense that they really celebrate diversity and multiculturalism, even in small town Saskatchewan. And I did all of my schooling there and moved to Vancouver just to do my master's, and then from there ended up in Adelaide to do my PhD.
What was it like to know that your family had escaped all that horror? Because I believe that Civil War's still going.
Yeah. So the funny thing is so when we actually left the country proper, I must have been about 4 or 4.5. So I genuinely have no recollection, and it's probably a good thing. What I do remember is being in Kenya, and Kenya was relatively stable, and I was with my whole family. So it was, all good over there. But where I found it to be really difficult to adapt was when we first got to Canada, just because it was just so far removed from anything I'd ever known. And we were just, like I said, probably the first or second African family in the little town where we first settled. So it was just really different. And it was probably the first time that I was like, oh, I'm very different. And it just, that feeling just really starts to set in then. So yeah, at first it was a bit of a challenge, but because we were so young when we got there, you just kind of learn to adapt. And I think kids are incredibly resilient like that. If I moved probably later in life, I don't know if I would have had such an easy time adjusting. Yeah.
But I guess you had each other.
Yeah.
And you went to a place that was welcoming. So
yeah,
that was
exactly.
Fortunate.
Yeah. And like I said, my siblings and I, we're all really close in age. So between myself and the youngest is 10 years. And there's 6 of us. So we all just were each other's best friends. And we at least had each other in the very beginning. And then as, things kind of settled in and we were okay, this is real life now. We just slowly started to integrate into the larger community, and it just became easier and easier as time went on. But yeah, just the support of my family and my parents and just their resilience, because I couldn't imagine completely starting over as an adult with 5 young children at the time and not speaking the language. It was not easy, but that's just a testament to their resilience, really. And that's probably where I get a lot of my strength from.
What have your parents given you now that you can reflect on that?
Just that sense that not to take anything for granted, which is why education was such a big thing for them. And they really just drilled that into our heads. It was everybody's going to uni, everybody's going to, make the most of the opportunities that they're given. And it's something that's just always stayed with me. Just because I know things could have been very, very different had they not gotten us out when they did. And had I not had the opportunities that I have, it just becomes very apparent not to squander that. So just to never take anything for granted, and to, yeah, just be thankful and just work really hard. And if you set your mind to anything, there's nothing you really can't achieve.
Because there's a lot of families that didn't make it away from that civil war.
Yeah, like I've still got like some extended relatives that never left, and like their experience is completely different to mine. And it's just, yeah, it's one of those things you're like, that very easily could have been me. And just that realization is enough to be like, okay, you can't be lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have a different understanding of that if you come from a background where life's not guaranteed or life's cheap potentially, and you actually have to fight just to survive. Then that's something that you only understand if you come from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very well put.
So how did you go down the path of child nutrition?
It was very roundabout way, actually. I didn't set out to do child nutrition. I was doing a master's of public health at the time in Vancouver. And part of the program was you had to do a practicum, and my concentration was global health. So it had to be like an international focused project. And I'd reached out to my now supervisor for my PhD at UBC, which is a different uni in BC, and said, hey, like I'm looking for a practicum, like this project sounds really interesting. Is it possible to be a practicum student for the summer? Like these are my skills, this is what I can contribute. And I came on board, and it was a really cool project. So it was like nutrition sensitive agriculture, which, just to explain, is basically helping small scale farmers in rural Cambodia improve their agricultural practices so that they can have year round food security. And from that, obviously, like improve the household nutrition. So I was very much interested in like the public health aspect of it, but I didn't really have a ton of training in nutrition at the time. And I basically just came on because I had experience doing survey research, and that's essentially what it was. So I did that and really loved it. And it was a multidisciplinary project. So there was people from like soil science and nutrition and business, because there was a whole focus on creating enough surplus that you would then empower, especially the women, because they're the ones that are really driving homestead agriculture, to be more entrepreneurial and sell their produce at markets and generate income and sort of like help them get out of poverty sort of thing. So all of that really spoke to me. But the thing that I really loved was just the actual focus on nutrition, like all of this stuff, like household food security, household income, women empowerment, all of these things really are just like cross-cutting themes across nutrition. And nutrition is one of those things, like if you don't get it right in those early years, it's really difficult to reverse those changes or those problems with growth and development. So I found that really interesting, and just the fact that it was a project that was the focus, but it did have a multidisciplinary aspect to it that really spoke to me. And I was like, oh, I really like this. And I had a really good relationship with all of the staff and all of the UBC staff as well, and just kind of stayed in touch. So after I finished my master's, the project manager ended up going on mat leave, and she just tapped me and she was like, hey, going on mat leave, you did really well with the project. We liked what you did during your practicum. Would you be happy to take over as project manager? So I just sort of fell into it, kept going, finished that project off. And then at that point I was just like, yeah, like this is what I want to do. Definitely need a bit more education. So decided to do a PhD. And I'd reached out to the principal investigator of that project, who at that point had moved over here to Adelaide. And I had no idea what Adelaide even was. So I had to like look it up on a map and be like, oh, geez, it's like in the middle.
Australia's Saskatchewan.
It really is. So yeah, just reached out and said, I'm interested in, potentially doing a PhD, and really like the whole survey population focus. And he was like, yeah, we might have something for you. Just apply to do University of Adelaide. So did all that, and I got one of 5 scholarships, which was really cool, to come here. And yeah, the rest is history.
What does it take to finish a PhD?
Oh, lots of blood, sweat, and tears, to be quite honest.
Which you were happy to
Yeah.
contribute.
Yeah, well, not all the time. There was a few times that I was like ready to hand in the towel, I won't lie, especially during COVID, because like I said, my entire family's back in Canada, and not being able to travel and not being able to go see them, especially like during particularly challenging times during the PhD.
That must have been tough.
Yeah, it was at that point that I was like kind of feeling sorry for myself a little bit and wanting to throw in the towel, but I'm really glad I didn't and just kept pushing, and lots of phone calls with mom and just lots of encouragement from her. So that really helped.
How were you able to see that through?
The PhD?
Yeah, especially during COVID and not having your family around.
Well, when you really can't do much, and that's like the one thing that you have to do, it was a really good time to do a PhD. There's not a ton of distractions.
You could focus on
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was really helpful. And because of the type of project that I had, it was actually like very well designed for COVID. And I just stayed busy throughout the whole thing because it was a remote type study. So we just had a lot of lockdown parents basically scrolling the internet, and they were just interested in being a part of our study. So we were able to finish data collection within a year. And
every cloud has a silver lining.
Exactly. So like in hindsight, it actually worked out really well. But yeah, it definitely did have challenges in the beginning, or in the middle bits when COVID really became a thing.
So how do you go being a world away from your family generally? Because you're obviously a big family person.
Yeah, honestly, it's not so bad anymore. Like, thank God for technology. Like, I'm able to, like, I spend most, if not like Saturday day, like Sunday day, just like catching up with everybody. So I'll just be on FaceTime for like hours. And now that international travel is open again, like I was able to go home last year for a good month and change. So that was really nice, and I'm planning on going back again. And now people can come and visit me, so it's not so bad. And I've got a really good community of friends here, so they definitely keep me grounded and keep me sane.
What was the focus of your PhD?
So we did Australia first, actually, which was really exciting. There was, up until like we published our study, there was no national data on dietary intakes of young children under the age of 2. They're not included in the national nutrition surveys. So really big evidence gap there. And we all know the first 2 years of life is really important in terms of neurodevelopment and nutrition and early feeding practices, because all of those things sort of set up the trajectory for life moving forward.
Was there the attitude that it's too difficult to get kids under 2?
Yeah, essentially they just kind of put them in the too hard basket. And what we showed was like, for not that much money, it's actually quite possible to get a pretty large sample size and to get really detailed data on food and nutrient intake in this age group. And one of the things that we found was, because we obviously don't have the resources that the federal government might, we had to do a convenience sample. So that's basically a little bit biased towards higher SES groups. But the interesting thing was that even within a really highly educated, socially advantaged sample size or sample, we did find some issues in terms of nutrient intake, particularly iron. And iron is one of those nutrients that it's 50 years on and we still don't really know as much about it as we should. And what we found was that 3/4 of infants had low intake relative to recommendations, and low iron intake is one of the biggest risk factors for iron deficiency, which could potentially have issues in terms of neurodevelopment as the child grows. So that was a big thing. And we also found that a lot of kids, especially the toddlers, 9 and 10, were getting discretionary foods. So those are foods that are not recommended for young children, like your chips and your lollies and your McDonald's chicken nuggets. So it's like...
And the packaged foods that are marketed as nutritious, like the squeezy pouches and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was well consumed as well. But the thing is like, we found these things in a well-to-do population. So it actually might be a best case scenario, which is really why we need this large nationally representative survey. And it's really something that should be happening at the federal government level. So we just have to do a little bit of advocacy to get them to get that on board.
So what gaps in the research are you trying to address? Is it everything to do with that 0 to 2 age group in terms of nutrition?
Not everything. If I tried to do everything, I would never get
too much
started.
pressure. Sorry.
If I had unlimited sums of money and staff, then yes.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Well, never say never.
Yeah, exactly. But no, the thing that I'm most interested in is the iron story. I find that incredibly fascinating because we have all of these beautiful RCTs that were done, but the majority of them were done in low and middle income countries. So there's a lot of background of infection and inflammation and socioeconomic deprivation. So what the effect of iron supplementation would be on neurodevelopment is really confounded by that. So what I would like to do is really do a high-powered RCT in a high-income country like Australia and really look at what the effect of iron supplementation on cognitive outcomes is. Because that's the thing. It's like you can have iron deficiency, and there's a lot of studies saying that there's an association with impaired neurodevelopment, but we don't know whether or not this is a dose response thing. We don't know if there's an actual like hard clinical outcome, like, yes, in fact, these kids, if they are iron deficient at X time, they will be compromised in terms of cognitive development. We can't definitively say that. And I would really love to be able to do really interesting research to look into that. And then also just to look at the requirements themselves. So if you recall, I said that 75% of infants at 6 to 12 months had low iron intake relative to recommendations. And the amount of iron that a 6-month-old needs is 11 milligrams a day, which is the equivalent of a half kilo of beef.
Yeah. And so then it's like, well, maybe the guidelines are asking way too much, because how does a infant consume that much mince?
Like as an adult, I don't think I could consume that in a day. It would just be too much. So how do we expect an infant to be able to do that? So it kind of leads us to believe that maybe these are set a little bit too high, and they're not even set using like actual experimental evidence. It's just based on extrapolations from adults and then down to children and then adjusted for body size. So it just, I feel like we need to reevaluate a lot of things.
Sharpen that up a bit.
Have actual evidence to underpin these. So that's sort of where I see myself.
That's your job.
Going. Yeah, exactly. I'll solve iron. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay, sounds good. So how do you spend your time outside of work?
I catch up with my friends a lot. I love to eat. We go out to dinner, and we had like fortnightly brunches going for a while that I organized, and I kind of let the ball drop. So I haven't been doing that. Yeah, I do that. I took up Latin dance actually shortly after COVID because I needed something to occupy my time.
Right.
And
how have you gone picking that up? It's not easy.
It's not bad.
Talking about salsa?
Not bachata, which is very similar.
Okay.
It's actually easier than salsa. Salsa is way too quick, which is probably why I didn't elect to do that. But yeah, I do bachata. I'm at level 2 now. It's very exciting.
Okay. How many levels are there?
4. So I've done level 2 like 4 times now.
Okay, cool.
It's just one of those things you just have repetition is all it is. Just into comedy and live shows and just normal stuff.
Why is it important to have a sense of humor?
Oh, you kind of have to. Otherwise you'd go crazy, wouldn't you?
If you don't laugh, you cry.
Yeah, exactly. And research makes you cry a lot.
Do your colleagues think you're funny?
I'd like to think so. I think I'm funny. And I think my colleagues would agree.
What does it mean to you to be a Bright ambassador this year and to be one of our examples of research and all the incredible things that happen at SAHMRI?
It's really incredible to be like, this is only the second year that...
It's the second in-person year.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had COVID and then we had to do it remotely.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I think it's incredible. And just the fact that you guys are just able to raise so much money for research and put it back into early career researchers. It's really great to be a part of that and to be able to support that in any way I can.
How can the community help researchers like you to do what you do, and what kind of a role can people play? Because that is the case, right? That the public can actually lend a hand and contribute in a way that actually translates to helping researchers like yourself.
I think recruitment is probably the most challenging part of research, especially like our theme, we do a lot of clinical trials. So we always need participants, and we also always need volunteers, especially when we're doing like trainings and stuff like that. You probably see lots of emails asking for parents with little ones so we can do a practice run on Bailey's assessments and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's hard to get people to sign up when they've already got so much going on, and they're not necessarily getting money in return. Or
so it is altruistic. Like that is essentially what it is. And we couldn't do anything that we do without our really, really supportive community of participants. So yeah, just staying engaged with research and contributing where possible, like either as a participant or as a volunteer to help us with training. Yeah.
Great. Do those surveys.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
We always need people to do surveys.
All right. Well, thanks, Najma, and good luck with solving iron.
Yeah.
I believe in you.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about SAHMRI and the researchers working to build a brighter, healthier future for you and your family, head to samhri.org.au.